Good evening. I'm Kelly Wright. Thanks for joining me as we spend this next hour together. I do sincerely hope that you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family in these troubling times because you matter. My opening observations, hang in there. Don't give up. There's a lot that's unfolded over the weekend. The president signing an executive order. We're going to be talking about that. And has it caused more harm than good? And has it also created more confusion about how we deal with the economic ramifications of this disruption from the COVID-19 pandemic? But the bottom line is, no matter what we go through, no matter how Congress behaves or what the president does, we have to stay focused on getting through this virus, sometimes on our own. And here's something to remember: no matter how much trouble this virus causes us or how many problems enters into our lives, remember this: if you feel like you're losing everything, and quite frankly, a lot of us do, remember that trees lose their leaves every year and they still stand tall and wait for better days to come. Therefore, my friends, never give up, never stop praying, and never stop believing, because you matter. And those are my opening observations. Joining me now on tonight's program is Dr. Benjamin Chavis. He's the president and, of course, the CEO of the NNPA, the Black Press USA. Doc, good of you to join us today and to weigh in on the matter that's before us in terms of the president and his plan to help Americans, he says, providing them with $400 a week instead of the $600 that the Democrats and the Republicans had agreed to before, through the CARES Act, the stimulus package. What do you think of the president's efforts with this executive order, and will it help?
Well, thank you very much, Kelly, and to all of the Black News Channel viewers on the Kelly Wright Show. I think that I was hoping that the president of the United States would increase from $600 to $800 or even $1,000 a week. I'm somewhat concerned that he cut $200 off. Now he's saying that they're going to give $400 a week rather than the $600 a week. And just let me say, from an African-American perspective, every dollar counts. And our community is in distress, economic distress, as a result of COVID-19. It's been devastating in terms of the fatalities. And now we're finding, Kelly, that there are long-term after effects for those who survived the disease are now experiencing long-term health issues. And of course, without comprehensive health care for all of Americans, which really should be on the agenda right now, I think one of the things that COVID-19 has exposed is the inadequacy, the underfunding of healthcare in America. Now we add the unemployment issue, stimulus issue. I'm waiting for Jim Clyburn, who's the chairman of the House Select Committee on COVID-19. They will have oversight over these next round of funding. It was a shame that the Senate left Washington, D.C. without funding the next round of stimulus for all Americans. And so, yes, I think it's good that the president did something, but I think it weighs in the balance as inadequate at this point, rather than lowering from 600 to 400. I would have thought, given the devastation of the disease, the devastation of the pandemic in America, that the president would have increased. You know, if he's concerned about his standing in the election, wouldn't it have been a great gesture for the president of the United States to say, you know what, I'm going to make sure that every American gets more dollars, not less dollars. So I think there will be some ramifications if it now appears the Trump administration is doing less and not more.
You know, from a Black press perspective and a Black American perspective, this goes to the core of the heartbreak that is within the African American community as it pertains to economic justice. And this is one of the things, if we echo back to the stance that Dr. King was really taking going all the way back to 1963, since we are in August, there will be a march on Washington commemorating that moment in time. but people forget that he was actually marching for jobs and freedom. And it seems like once we got past the civil rights struggle, Doc, that America said, okay, we're done now. But there's still the economic justice. And the point of my question is to bring back that history is because whatever the president does and whatever Congress does from here on, I think they need to be mindful of the fact that, yes, they have to take care of all Americans, but Black Americans in particular need to have some economic parity.
Oh, absolutely. And when Dr. King gave his famous speech, I Have a Dream speech, in August of 1963, it was not only around public accommodations, but it was also economic justice. It was economic equity, economic parity. And certainly the demand for jobs and freedom from 1963 to 2020 is still consistent. In wake of the passing of John Lewis, in the wake of the passing of C.T. Vivian, in the wake of the passing of Joseph Lowery, and many others who have struggled so hard for civil rights, for voting rights, we all knew and still know today that economic justice was at the top of Dr. King's agenda. And it must be at the top of our agenda as we commemorate later this month the anniversary of the March on Washington. Some of the marches will be virtual because of COVID-19. People will not be able to assemble en masse in Washington this year, but we all can mobilize en masse. We need to make sure that we are still counted in the census. You know, there's been an undercount so far in the Black community. We need to make sure we get out to vote. There's still voter suppression going on and voter repression, Kelly, around the country. And then now we have the question of the devastating economic impact. And I just want to do a sidebar with you, Kelly. You know, a report just came out that there have been 100,000 kids, that means young people, who have been infected now by COVID-19. And the majority of those kids are Black and Latinx. Yep. And so we have to really talk about when the economic impact of COVID-19 on our families, on our communities, and on brothers and sisters of all ages, from the very young to the very elderly, who are struggling to survive. And this failure of the Congress, this failure of the White House to come together in the interest of the American people. This is not politics. This rises above whether you're a Republican, Democrat, or independent. This rises to the very core of why we have a democracy. We all should be able to vote, but we all should be able to get the benefits of the democracy. And there is no greater benefit than economic security.
Dr. Benjamin Chavis, thank you for joining me today. I know you're very busy right now, but I appreciate and value your time. And let's continue to focus on having this dialogue and this exchange of ideas and opinions and analysis of what's going on in our country, because our country's in dire need of some leadership, and Congress has to perform responsibly. And the president has to do the same thing. So we just have to keep talking about this and challenge our leaders to do the right thing. Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's keep the dialogue going. Let's keep pressing. And, I have to be optimistic that if we continue to struggle, we will continue to make progress.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. We got to speak life to it and live it. Thank you, Dr. Ben Chavis.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless you too. Back with more after this. So joining me now to talk about the coronavirus and the fact that it has now reached 5 million cases in America, and 97,000 children so far have tested positive for it, yet we continue to debate on going back to school and reopening schools. Dr. Yolanda Hancock joins me now. She is a pediatrician, knows a little bit about children and the needs that they have. She's also a public health expert in working with the Milken Institute of Public Health. They're at the George Washington University. Doc, good of you to join us today.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I find the fact that we have 5 million cases to be extremely alarming and very sobering, because if you factor in the fact that we went from 4 million, I believe in June, to 5 million to now, that is a million cases in 30 plus days.
Right. And imagine the exponential increase, because the rule of thumb is for every one COVID case, you can expect, if there isn't control, that that turns into 5 cases. And then you see that continuous exponential rise. So to have 1 million cases in 30 days, I can't imagine where we will be in December. And that's what's really sobering for me, especially when you combine that with flu season.
Yes, exactly, because that just compounds the issue. What's your concerns about children? Because we know now that there are 97,000 cases, uh, roughly about 100,000 children who have been impacted, yet we've heard people, including the President of the United States, saying children are immune to this.
Right. So the 97,000 is just an increase. That's an increase between when they looked at specific dates between July 16th and July 30th. There was a 97,000 case increase among children. Children make up over 300,000 COVID-19 cases. There were 97,000 increased cases, which is an uptick of about 40% between the weeks of July 16th and July 30th. So that's what's most frightening for me, is that as we're talking about going back to school, organized sports, because children were under stay-at-home orders just as were adults, we don't really know the impact that COVID has on children because the numbers just weren't there. And when we start talking about bringing our kids back to in-person classroom settings, that frightens me as a mother and as a pediatrician, given that children are not immune. We understand completely that children are at risk. When we look at the data, 1 in 3 children with COVID-19 ends up in the ICU. That number is no different than in adults. So if we're seeing the same level of ICU admission, we're seeing that children are actually at risk for it. The question is, a lot of times, well, they're not going to die from it, right? The fatality rate for COVID among children is significantly low, less than 1%. But I don't want my daughter in the ICU. I don't want her to develop multi-system inflammatory syndrome. I want her protected. And those are the numbers that we have to pay attention to.
And my concern is that a lot of people are still saying that this is all junk science. And when I say a lot of people, I mean the critics of the science that's basically saying protect your life, protect your family. And then there are people who just want to love their freedom, and so they want to exercise their freedom to not wear a mask. That's fine. But we still find ourselves politicizing this. And I was looking through history, and in 1918, during the Spanish flu, there were people wearing masks in order to get rid of it and to mitigate it and to flatten the curve of the Spanish flu. And it meant not going back to school for a year. And I think we did all right after going through that and actually having the wherewithal and the knowledge to deal with it and not paint it as some sort of government intrusion upon our lives.
A liberty issue, right? But I think collectivism back in 1918, in terms of this united front to work together, we don't have that same sense here. It's about me, myself, and I, my rights, my ability to walk freely without wearing a mask, instead of thinking about it collectively in terms of us protecting each other and allowing us to return to normal. A friend pushed out an op-ed. He's an infectious disease doctor, and he talked about the wearing of a mask for 30 days. This has been a recurring message from experts across the globe. If we wear a mask for 2 cycles of COVID-19 infectivity, so the COVID-19 lifespan is about 14 days. If it doesn't find anybody to infect, it dies out. So you allow 2 of those life cycles to happen, which is the equivalent of about 30 days of mask wearing. Everyone wears it collectively. That's how we get back to normal. That's how we bring our kids back to school and how we recover our economy. As we continue to be selfish in our approach, whether it be in the leadership positions or individually as community members, this will be a continuously vicious cycle until we can work together to stop COVID's transmission.
Very well said, Doc. I only hope that people are listening and judging from the way what I was seeing this morning during my walk. I saw families without masks and little kids all the way up to the adults. And I'm thinking, just wear a mask and COVID down. That's your famous statement. I'm sticking with it.
It's not that complicated.
It's not complicated. Dr. Yolanda Hancock, good of you to join us. Thank you, as always.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, we're back with more after this. So we want to look at what's happening in the perspective of politics as it revolves around the president's executive order on coronavirus, the stimulus package. And then there's the fact that Congress is still failing to perform responsibly by taking care of the American people. To do that with me now is political analyst Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver. And Doc, weigh in on this for me. What's your first take or response to the president's executive order, which has caused a lot of people some confusion? And as I heard from Dr. Benjamin Chavis earlier, the Black Press USA, it certainly isn't a situation where it takes it far enough in taking care of the American people.
Oh, absolutely not. Well, first of all, it's a political stunt. I mean, you can call it an executive order, I guess maybe technically. However, it's really a political stunt, right? Because we all know that Congress has the power of appropriations. And, he set this up, first of all, in his golf club, man of the people that he is, and had his little folks there in the back cheering along as he blamed Democrats for not being able to come to a resolution when actually, it is the Republicans who themselves have been infighting about this, and the Democrats who had provided through the House a bill that's been sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk for months. And so here we are now in the, past the final hour with now people needing this help desperately. And he's come back to the table proposing that he could do something that's only partially of what people need. And it's disappointing. It's smoke and mirrors. It's what he normally is. It has nothing to do with really helping the American people. It's a political stunt that he thinks will help him come election day.
Avis, to your point, the concern that many people have, I know that I have, is that I've seen people out trying just to get food. And thank God there are organizations out there that are providing food. But I spoke to one person here in Montgomery County, which is one of the wealthiest districts in America. And she explained to me the food pantry is sometimes bone dry because that many people in this county need food. And then they explained to me that they even went to a home with a 3-car garage to deliver food. Now that means it's not only impacting Black people and brown people, but it's impacting not only poor people, but also the well-to-do who relied on their businesses to get them through tough times. And now it's bottomed out. So I guess the question I have for you is, what in the heck is Congress doing playing games with the American lives, as well as the president for that matter?
Absolutely. I mean, this is horrible. This is a situation that is really unlike any that we've seen in this nation, definitely in any of our lifetimes. It's a dire situation. This is not like any other normal, if there is such thing as a normal recession. This isn't a recession that one hits under normal circumstances. This COVID-produced economic calamity, as you mentioned, is hitting people all up and down the economic spectrum. And it's something that, unfortunately, we still don't see an end to because of the completely inept way in which the health crisis has been mismanaged. And so it is a very, very difficult circumstance. The challenge, though, is that we have leadership right now who has not prioritized the American people. And it seems that what's happened is that, once again, it's all about trying to produce a political stunt that they believe will help them to be able to move forward together in a way that would help them on election day. In terms of what the Democrats have done, they at least have tried to push this forward. They have offered to sort of negotiate to come to some sort of balance in terms of what they are looking. The Democrats want more money, for example, for individuals. The Republicans want less. They have agreed to come down a little bit with what they would be willing to accept. But the Republicans, it appears, have not accepted that at all. And so we're still at the stalemate. Nobody wins here. And of course, the people who end up at the bottom of the barrel are the American people, over 20 million of whom have lost their jobs. Millions of businesses are like either gone completely or hanging on by a hair, and people are suffering. There's time for something to be done immediately, and unfortunately, we just don't have the political fortitude and leadership in Washington, D.C. to make that happen.
It has to end. I'm an optimist. I have a lot of faith in God, not in man. So I'm going to be praying very much that we get through this, that we get over whatever the hiccup is in Congress. And I know it's all politics, and election politics is even more, it even causes more of a problem because
Absolutely.
everyone wants to be reelected.
Mm-hmm.
And we all get infected by this disease of greed and just not doing the right thing for all the people.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't govern for some of the people. It's got to be for all the people. Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, thank you. And thank you for letting me go on there a little bit there. It just hurts to see that more Americans are going to be hurting because of Congress not doing the right thing. Let's see what happens when they return.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. Hopefully they'll get it.
All right. And we're looking for you Wednesday. We got a special thing that we're going to be doing on how women are faring through these tough, unprecedented times economically and spiritually, and how they motivate their children to stay afloat as well.
That's going to be powerful. Looking forward to it.
I look forward to it as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back with more after this. Welcome back to the program. As you know, there's a lot of talk about what's going on with our economy, how do we deal with our finances, and furthermore, what do we do because of the disruption to our economy from the coronavirus. This pandemic, as I've stated on this show so many times, is a great disruptor, not only of all things economically, but also our health, the disparities that we have in the Black community. And so speaking of that, and to address all of these factors, I want to bring in Ryan Mack now. And Ryan is an author, he's a finance, not a professor, but he could be our professor to tell us how to deal with this economy that we're stuck in right now. Ryan, I want to go to the core of what got you involved in finance, because you were on a different path and you saw, wait a minute, I can help Black Americans, Brown Americans, all Americans deal with their economic woes and actually cause them to have an upturn rather than a downturn. Tell me about that first, and let's get into some of the things you're actually focusing on now.
Well, actually, I have been a professor. I've been an adjunct professor. I've taught at Hostos CUNY in the Heights. I taught at Medgar Evers College when I was the chair of the Education Foundation there, and all based on financial literacy curriculum. I used to be a trader at the largest NASDAQ trading firm in the country, Knight Equity Markets. And from that, I realized that not a lot of individuals knew a lot about financial literacy. They didn't know a lot about the markets, didn't know about trading. I started long story short, a group and started to write about it. People started to ask additional questions about credit, which I quite frankly didn't know that much about then either. And so I started to expand my research and expand my learning. And then I took a position, or I got offered a position at a firm. I won't name the name of the firm. And I was so excited to get this job offer. And I left my firm at night to take this offer. And the guy said to me, I said, I'm going to take this information to my church. I'm going to take it to my community. I want to take it. He looked at me in my face and said, Ryan, unless you're only working with high net worth individuals, everybody else is a waste of time. And so quite frankly, I said, well, you know what? I got to have my attorneys. I didn't have any attorneys at the time. I said, I got to have my attorneys look over this information and I'll sign it. And I read a verse of scripture, Proverbs 3:27, do not withhold good from those who deserve it when it is in your power to act. And at that time, it's 2004, and financial literacy really wasn't that popular then. My aunt had even asked me, Ryan, what is a stock? So it wasn't popular to be pushing financial literacy. So I decided to say, you know what, let me dedicate my time. I declined that offer at that firm and started my own company. And from that point on, it just kind of expanded from there, teaching, writing books. I was blessed to do some various hits on CNN and CNBC, and Wendy Williams picked me up. And so there's a few things that God really has led me along the way. And my whole role now at this point is really just making sure that we can educate the masses.
What's your pressing concern right now in the age of COVID-19?
Right. Well, day to day, I'm actually in my business. I write curriculum, and there are a lot of folks within one of the unions that I work with, 1199 SEIU. I'll give one example where I developed some home care worker curriculum. In the city of New York, there are 58,000 home care workers in this particular union. And of them, the average income in the city of New York is about between $20,000 and $30,000 a year. And then, in the city of New York, and that's not household, that's a personal income. That's for the whole household, basically, rather. So that's really challenging to make it. You're making 20 grand a year living in the city of New York, then that's not even living check to check. You're living check to Monday. So we're trying to figure out ways, especially in these times, to figure out how to help individuals to just learn how to take whatever dollars they have to create additional income, start businesses, learn about all the things. I just had a great call this morning with one where, and these calls happen daily for me. One young lady, Verizon was trying to charge her $442 for services that she didn't even really get because she had canceled the services. She was upset with it. She didn't want to pay it because they was always cutting off her services, and they dinged her credit report. So I called them and challenged them. I said, listen, if you're willing to take an essential worker to court for $442 in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a recession, for services that you didn't even provide, then that's a fight we're willing to have. And these type of conversations and discussions that even if I'm not involved, that I really want to educate as many people as possible, you can do these types of things and make your dollars stretch. And again, as we wait for the various, I guess, CARES Act Part 3 or 4, whatever it's on now, to come out, and we see what's going to be in this new package and extended financial support, there are some things that we can do. There are some things that we can do to make sure that we can help sustain ourselves to get to that next check. And so my job is to help individuals while the government does what they do. Let's figure out what we can do. And that's where my focus has been, not even just in times of Corona, but going on for almost 20 years now.
And in those 20 years, you have absolutely changed the course of people's financial fortunes. And I think that's been a great thing for a lot of people, especially in Black and brown communities.
Right.
I want you to stay with me because on the other side of the break, I'd like to ask you what your current campaign is to help the church get more actively engaged in helping the Black community deal with financial matters, especially with regard to some of these check cashing places.
Absolutely.
We'll be back with more with Ryan Mack right after this. Welcome back to the program. So I'm talking about your finances in this age of COVID-19. And I think one of the best people to talk about that is Ryan Mack, because one, he's from Detroit. He grew up knowing what life was like for Black folk. He has not forgotten where he came from, but now you're armed with knowledge. And you got armed with knowledge in such a great way that you started sharing that knowledge. And you explained to me how a firm that you used to work for, a big finance firm, didn't really want you taking this message to the church,
right,
to the marginalized, underserved, forgotten communities, because they felt you wouldn't find any wealth there. But there's actually gold in our community.
Oh man, I mean, that almost gets me emotional thinking about it, because we have so much potential in our communities, and we have so much potential. And a lot of individuals think that it's even in the Black community that we're poor. Then why are so many organizations trying to come in and exploit the Black community if we're so poor? There's potential, there's dollars, there's wealth, there's knowledge, there's wisdom, there's all sorts of gold, as you say, in our communities. It's just how do we get it out? It says in Ephesians 1 and 3, blessed is the Lord and Father of our God, Jesus Christ, who hath blessed us with all spiritual blessings in heavenly places in Christ. That means he's blessed us with everything we need. The number one prayer that we need to say now is thank you, because anything that you want, the spiritual blessings have already been given to you. It's just up to you to learn how to take those spiritual blessings and manifest them into physical blessings. It also says our love must not be a thing of words and fine talk, but a thing of action and sincerity. So let's take the knowledge that we have and not just talk about it, but let's sincerely put action to these things and go out. And as we walk down the street, we'll see the evidence of what people think about us with, you'll see the check cashing places trying to exploit us for what we don't know about opening up our own bank accounts. You'll see the payday loans trying to exploit us for what we might not do in terms of managing our money in the best way and trying to put us in that cycle of 200 to 300% interest rate. I did a tour through the pawn shop in Detroit, back home, American Jewelry and Own, which was actually a lesson Seth. They let me do workshops inside the pawn shop. They had over 1,000 people per day going inside the pawn shop. And I went in the back and I saw televisions that had been there for 4 to 5 years that people continue to pay on. They could have paid for the television twice over if they hadn't done that. I saw rows of fur coats, and they said, Ryan, they buy the fur coat in the fall, they wear it in the winter, they pawn it in the spring, they pay for it over the summer, they pay for it over the fall, and they bring it back out in the winter, so the cycle starts over and over again. So yes, there's a lot of systemic things that we need to change, and I've marched as much as anybody. I've been in Cleveland for Tamir Rice. I've been blocked the bridge for Eric Gardner, but there's some things in Brooklyn, and the names go on and on, which we've continued to march and go out and fight against systemic change. But what we have to do is really understand that while we fight to take the bars off the bird and let the bird be able to fly outside of the cage, the bird also has to learn how to fly. And that's when it comes to financial literacy and education of what can we do for ourselves to grow and create wealth for ourselves. So we've done a lot of things in order to do that.
So tell me what we can do in the immediate now, in the here and present now, to deal with things.
Well, this is the thing, right? So I've done a lot of thinking about this, 2 decades worth of thinking about this, and I saw, and the FDIC calculates that there's about a $320 billion revenue stream for check cash and payday loans, rent-to-rem stores, rent-to-weave stores. Yes, people are taking out loans to pay for the hair weaves and rents and rims on their car. Pawn shops, which has become the new bank in many parts of our neighborhoods. And so that's a $320 billion revenue driving industry, not including the $70 billion on top of that. So that's $390 billion when you include the lotto. So there's a lot of individuals who are, quite frankly, using luck to having faith in luck as opposed to having faith in what God has put inside of them to be successful. So they have successfully integrated themselves and interwoven themselves into our communities. In every corner, you'll see at the liquor store, you'll see lotto and check cash in the same place. They've made it very convenient. So what we have to do is arm ourselves with education. And as much as they've been able to integrate that into the culture of our communities to exploit us, we have to integrate education into the culture of our communities to educate us and empower us. So I'm partnered with organizations and firms like AARP Foundation. And it's a mysavingsjar.org platform that we're using to help churches, to help families, to help organizations jump online all free of charge to form their own savings clubs. And when they jump online, when they sign up for the platform, I'm then able to engage with them, people all across the country. And if they have any question at all, I'm able to engage and have other financial experts that are assisting me to sustain all the additional questions that we're getting as we launch this. And they get their questions answered. We answer questions about debt, answer questions about credit, answer questions about estate planning. All of these things, all on the platform, mysavingsjar.org. And if they have further need for ongoing help and assistance, again, God has already blessed us with everything we already need. So we don't have to look outside of our own communities and partner with organizations like Spring Forth through AARP. I can look up via zip code all the nonprofits in the local area that provide free one-on-one counseling. There's so many nonprofits all throughout this country that are providing one-on-one counseling free of charge. And guess what? Their main role is helping, but they're not really good at community outreach because they don't get the funding for it, but they're great at helping people. So we've vetted over 15,000 nonprofits all across the country and continuously update the platform. So if my name is John and I'm in New Orleans and I've got a question and I'm watching the Black News Channel and I have a question about financial literacy and I send an email and signing up for My Savings Jar, I sent an email to this guy, Ryan Mack. He sends me back a response and he sends me back a list of all the resources in my area that I can go to for free to empower myself and get out that check cash and places line and help to get integrated back into the banking system. Because there's a vested interest in banks to make sure that their customers accumulate wealth. but there's a vested interest in those who exploit us to keep us ignorant and poor and begging and out of the system, because as long as you're not accumulating wealth, as long as you're not building your credit, as long as you're outside the system, you're perpetuating an underclass of poverty in society that they want to continue to exploit over and over again. And quite frankly, as many people know, it's very expensive to be poor. So we have to fix this with a systemic approach, and that's what we were doing through AARP Foundation. I'm happy to be partnering with them and working with them. I prayed to God, I said, God, I want something that can be free to the people. I don't want any sales pitches. I don't have to sell insurance on the back end and go here, and after a couple of weeks, you got to pay $4.99. I don't want any of that. I want it to be free and pure. They agree with that. And then we agree with that. So we formed this partnership, and we're just rolling it out now. Happy to really announce it on this show as we speak.
On that note, my friend, you are welcome back all the time, anytime, because it's the right time for Matt to be on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You'll get an argument from me on that. I am not afraid for people to express their faith, because it's the most important thing in the world. Had a network executive tell me that. He's the president of a news organization, major news organization. And he's telling the most underreported and yet most important factor in the world today is faith.
Absolutely.
Yes. So
that's a statement right there, brother.
Yeah, so that's a good one. Ryan Mack on the program. You'll see more of him. Don't touch your dial when he's on, because he's got some facts that we all need to listen to. And good to have you on, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you.
We'll be back with more after this. Welcome back to the program. Time now to strengthen the family. We can do that with two of my good friends, George and Tondra Gregory. They are the founders of Journey for Life, which is a relationship marriage coaching program that's known throughout so many different circles as they have helped families stay together and have breakthrough after breakthrough. They're also sports-minded because they're NFL chaplains for the Los Angeles Chargers, so they can give us some tidbits on what's happening on the gridiron. But more importantly, they're here today to talk about how to strengthen the family. And George and Tondra, one of the toughest things we have to do in our family structure is to have those tough conversations. And right now, in a tough year of 2020 and all the tough things that are going on, how do we best handle tough conversations between ourselves at home?
Yeah, so every couple experiences conflicts and disagreements, right? That's just a part of life. And sometimes we just, we don't want to deal with them. We want to just keep, pushing them out the way just to keep our routine and keep things smooth.
Yeah, and Kelly, a lot of times we want to avoid the conflict, right? We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to bring it up. Maybe it's because we don't know what to say. We don't know how to say it. Maybe sometimes we don't want to set the other person off, whether it's our spouse or whether it's our kids or whatever. But tough conversations, we can't avoid those, right? It's kind of like the low battery on your laptop. You know it's coming, right? And that's the indicator that you need to do something different, or we hate to get those check engine lights, right, in the car. But if you don't respond to that check engine light, there will be a breakdown, and it might be costly. And so to not avoid those conversations actually helps us out in the long run.
Well, you guys have unpacked a lot that can go on in between two members of the family and their children. But again, I see the practicality. If you strengthen the family on being able to handle those tough conversations, then it stands to good reason that you should be able to duplicate that outside of the home. But the point is, everybody at home's got to be learning how to handle tough conversations. So when they show up at the job or they show up in a stressful situation, they know how to de-escalate the situation and get to some understanding that we can agree to disagree, but we still have to live in harmony.
That's
right.
So true.
That's right.
That's so true.
Right. We in fact, Kelly, we know this is that as believers, we know that whatever we do at home impacts our whole world. And so that's the home life is really the testing ground for everything that we want to be out in public. We do it best at home. That's why we have to practice these things right in the comfort of our own home.
Yes, and tackling tough conversation takes courage, right? We've got to have the courage to tackle these conversations so that we can go ahead and move past the impasse, right? And become, like you say, harmonious, and not get it clogged up like a pipe, right? Like if we don't have these conversations, it just gets kind of clogged up, and it doesn't help us move forward.
Yeah, it doesn't have that breakthrough. But George and Tandra, I can't thank you enough for that, having those tough conversations and being able to deal with it. And again, I think the more people watch our segment on family strength and making the family stronger, as we strengthen a family, we can strengthen our neighborhoods, our cities, our nation. And that's what we're really trying to do with Strengthen the Family. It all starts at home. So thank you for bringing it home. George and Tandra Gregory, Journey for Life, NFL chaplains to the Los Angeles Chargers. Love you guys. Thank you.
Love you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're back with more after this. And we're back now, and time for my final word. Remember what I said at the top of this show. Let's stay optimistic and positive. Never stop praying, never stop believing, and never, ever give up. Hopefully we've been righted, ignited, and united to keep spreading love, freedom, and peace. Good night.
Come on, all aboard. Let me break it down for you like this. The rhythm of love is easy to find if you're listening. The color of light isn't red, black, or white, but it's crimson. We all bleed the same. If you don't feel the groove, it's all right. Just give it time, give it time. Come on, y'all. Get on board. Mankind won't survive if our hearts beat inside a hateful rhythm. You see, love isn't bought, but comes with a price of forgiveness, and we all bleed the same. Yeah. If you don't feel it now, just wait. It's coming on, the love train. Just give it time, give it time. Get on board. That means you and you and you on the love train. Get on board. All creeds and colors, brothers, all sisters and brothers, on the love train. Get on board the love train.